I'm Layla, 45 years old, standing in the ruins of what used to be my thriving bakery. 20 years of building this place, now everything's gone. Yesterday's foreclosure notice still crumpled in my pocket. Then she walked in the same homeless girl I fed 20 years ago now, wearing a designer suit. "You don't remember me, do you?" she said, holding an envelope that would change everything. Before I continue the story, let me ask, have you ever wondered if one small act of kindness could circle back when you need it most? Share where you're watching from and subscribe if you believe in second chances. Let me take you back to 2004 when my bakery Sunrise Bread first opened its doors in downtown Portland. The neighborhood was working class, filled with families who'd lived there for generations, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your grandmother's secret recipes. My husband Marcus had just gotten promoted at his accounting firm, and our twin daughters Emma and Grace were 5 years old, their pigtails bouncing as they helped me arrange muffins in the display case every Saturday morning. Those early days were magical. By 6 in the morning, construction workers lined up outside for my fresh sourdough and strong coffee. Nurses from the nearby hospital would stop by after their night shifts exhausted, but smiling when they smelled the cinnamon rolls. There was this elderly couple, Harold and Margaret, who came every Tuesday for my apple turnovers. Margaret would always say they reminded her of her mother's baking from 60 years ago. The bakery wasn't just successful, it was the heartbeat of our community. I knew every regular's order by heart. Tommy the electrician liked his coffee black with 2 sugars and a blueberry scone. Maria from the flower shop next door preferred whole wheat toast with homemade strawberry jam. These weren't just customers, they became family. It was a bitter February morning when I first saw her. The thermometer read 12 degrees and frost covered the windows like delicate lace. I was pulling fresh bread from the oven when I noticed someone huddled against the building trying to shelter from the wind. She couldn't have been more than 14, wearing a thin winter coat that had seen better days, her shoes held together with silver duct tape that caught the streetlight. I opened the door, and the cold air rushed in like an unwelcome guest. "Come inside," I said, not asking, just stating. She looked up at me with eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. The other customers stared, some shifting uncomfortably, but I didn't care. I sat her at the corner table, the one near the heating vent, and brought her hot chocolate with extra marshmallows and a plate piled high with fresh bread and butter. She didn't speak at first, just wrapped her fingers around the mug like it was the most precious thing in the world. When she finally looked up, tears were streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, and those 2 words carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken struggles. From that day forward, she became a regular fixture in my bakery. 3 times a week, sometimes more, she'd appear at different times, always quiet, always grateful. Some customers complained. "Why are you encouraging this one woman?" asked, her nose wrinkled in disgust. "She's probably on drugs or something." But I stood firm. "Everyone deserves kindness," I replied. "And if you don't like it, there are other bakeries in town." Over the next few months, I learned bits and pieces about her. Her name was Angela. She'd aged out of foster care at 13 when her last placement didn't work out. She slept wherever she could find shelter and survived on whatever she could find. She was brilliant, though. Sometimes I'd catch her reading books she'd borrowed from the library, advanced texts about computers and programming that went way over my head. She had this quiet dignity about her, never asking for more than what I offered, always trying to help by wiping down tables or sweeping the floor when she thought I wasn't looking. I started leaving little care packages by the back door, on days when she didn't come in, always finding them gone the next morning. 6 months after that first February morning, Angela simply vanished. One day she was there, the next she wasn't. I asked around, checked with the shelter, even filed a missing person report. But nothing. The police officer just shrugged. "These kids drift in and out," he said. "She probably moved to another city." But I worried about her, constantly wondering if she was safe, if she was eating, if she was even alive. Life, however, has a way of moving forward whether we're ready or not. The bakery continued to thrive. We expanded our menu, hired more staff, and eventually opened a second location on the other side of town. Marcus's career flourished. The girls grew into beautiful teenagers, and our savings account grew steadily. We bought a larger house in a better neighborhood, took family vacations to Hawaii, and started college funds that would ensure our daughters could attend any university they chose. By 2019, Sunrise Bread had become a Portland institution. Food bloggers wrote articles about our authentic sourdough process. The mayor held press conferences at our main location. We'd been featured in 3 national magazines as one of America's best local bakeries. I had 12 employees, 2 thriving locations, and a reputation that extended far beyond our neighborhood. Marcus had been promoted to regional manager at his company, overseeing 5 offices across Oregon and Washington. The twins were both in college now. Emma was at Stanford studying pre-med her dream since she was 8 and helped bandage a bird's broken wing. Grace was at Columbia pursuing law, determined to fight for social justice. We were living the American dream, or so I thought. The first signs of trouble came disguised as opportunity. A development company from Seattle started buying up property in our neighborhood. They offered generous amounts to longtime business owners, promising to revitalize the area. But revitalization meant pushing out the very people who made the neighborhood special. I watched as the flower shop closed, then the hardware store, then the family-owned pharmacy that had been there since 1952. They approached me multiple times, each offer more substantial than the last. The final number they presented would have set us up for life. But Sunrise Bread wasn't just a business. It was a legacy, a gathering place, a symbol of community resilience. I refused every offer, determined to preserve this landmark for future generations. Marcus started working longer hours, claiming new responsibilities at work required his attention. He'd come home after midnight, slip into bed thinking I was asleep, smelling of cologne I didn't recognize, and something else, something sharp and chemical I couldn't quite place. When I asked about it, he laughed it off. "New client who chain smokes," he said. "You know how the smell sticks to everything." Strange charges began appearing on our business credit cards. $500 here, $1,000 there, always to companies with generic names that told me nothing. When I questioned Marcus, he had ready explanations. New software subscriptions for accounting, upgraded security systems, maintenance contracts. He handled our finances. He'd always handled our finances. I trusted him completely. The health inspector arrived on a Thursday morning, clipboard in hand, expression grim. He found violations that had never been mentioned in 15 years of previous inspections. A crack in the floor tile that supposedly harbored bacteria. Ventilation that suddenly didn't meet code. A refrigerator temperature gauge that was off by half a degree. The list went on and on, each violation requiring expensive immediate repairs. $20,000, the contractor said, examining the list. "Maybe 25 if we run into problems." Marcus assured me our savings could cover it. "Don't worry, honey," he said, kissing my forehead. "We've planned for emergencies like this." The repairs were completed. The bakery passed re-inspection, and I pushed the nagging doubts to the back of my mind. Emma called from Stanford needing an extra $3,000 for books and lab fees. Grace needed money for a summer internship in Washington that would look great on her resume, but didn't pay anything. Of course we sent it. What parent wouldn't support their children's dreams? Marcus handled the transfers just as he always did. Sarah, my assistant manager who'd been with me for 8 years, pulled me aside one afternoon. Her expression was troubled, uncertain. "Layla, I don't know how to say this, but I saw something strange last week." She hesitated, wringing her hands. "I saw Marcus take money from the register. Not ring it up, just take it." I laughed, though it sounded hollow even to my ears. He probably needed cash for something and forgot to tell me. "We're married, Sarah. What's mine is his." But Sarah didn't look convinced, and the seed of doubt she'd planted began to grow. More employees mentioned seeing Marcus at the casino across state lines. "Just thought you should know," they'd say, carefully watching my face for a reaction. I confronted him that night, trying to keep my voice steady. "The casino, Marcus really." His face didn't change, didn't show a flicker of guilt. "Client entertainment," he said smoothly. "You know how it is. Take them out, show them a good time, close the deal. It's all about relationships in business." And because I wanted to believe him, because I needed to believe him, I did. The call from the bank came on a Monday morning. "Mrs. Patterson, this is Jennifer from First National. We're calling about your recent loan payment. It appears the check bounced. There must be sufficient funds in the business account." That couldn't be right. We had over 50,000 in that account last time I checked. Marcus took the phone from my hand, his voice calm and professional. Jennifer. Yes, this is Mr. Patterson. I see the issue. We transferred funds between accounts and there must have been a timing problem. I'll handle it this afternoon. So sorry for the confusion. He hung up and smiled at me, that same warm smile that had convinced me to marry him 22 years ago. Bank error, he said. You know how they are with their computers. Always glitching. I'll sort it out. But the doubts were piling up like flour on a baker's counter, impossible to ignore. I started paying closer attention, started asking more questions. Marcus grew irritable, accusing me of not trusting him after 2 decades of marriage. You're being paranoid, he'd say. The stress of fighting those developers is getting to you. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was seeing problems where none existed. After all, this was Marcus, the man who'd held my hand through labor, who'd taught our daughters to ride bikes, who'd supported my dream of opening the bakery when everyone else said it was too risky. Surely I was overreacting. January 2024 arrived with a blizzard and a registered letter that would shatter my world completely. Foreclosure notice. It read in bold letters across the top. Our home, the beautiful 4-bedroom colonial where we'd raised our daughters, was 3 months behind on mortgage payments. This has to be a mistake, I said, my hands shaking as I held the paper. Marcus snatched the letter from my hands, his face flushing red. These damn banks and their incompetent staff, he muttered. I'll go down there right now and straighten this out. Don't worry about it. Just another administrative error. But something in his eyes, a flicker of panic quickly suppressed, told me this was no error. After he left supposedly for the bank, I went through his office. I'd never violated his privacy before, never felt the need to. What I found destroyed 22 years of trust in 22 minutes. Credit card statements hidden in a locked drawer, the lock easily broken with a screwdriver. Hundreds of thousands in gambling debts spread across a dozen cards. Many I didn't even know existed. Cash advances at casinos, online gambling sites, sports betting apps. The dates went back 3 years, a spiral of debt that started small and grew into a monster that devoured everything we'd built. There were loan documents with my signature, except I'd never signed them. He'd forged my name, used the bakery as collateral, taken out a second mortgage on our house. Both bakery locations were leveraged so far beyond their value that we essentially owned nothing but debt. The college fund's $40,000 saved over 18 years gone. Our retirement savings vanished. Every safety net we'd carefully woven had been torn to shreds. I was sitting at his desk, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, when my phone rang. Mom Emma's voice was confused, scared. My tuition check bounced. The registrar's office says if it's not paid by Friday, I can't continue classes. They're threatening to revoke my scholarship. What's going on? Before I could answer, another call came through. Grace crying so hard I could barely understand her. Mom, I can't afford textbooks. I've been working 3 jobs just to pay rent, but I can't keep up with everything. I haven't told you because I didn't want to worry you, but I haven't eaten anything but ramen for 2 weeks. My daughters, my brilliant, ambitious daughters, were suffering while their father gambled away their futures. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, hot and sharp and all-consuming. But beneath it was something worse, the crushing weight of failure as a mother who couldn't protect her children. Marcus didn't come home that night, or the next. On the 3rd day, I found a note on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, it read. I never meant for it to go this far. I have a problem, and I've hurt everyone I love. The divorce papers are in the mail. Don't try to find me. 22 years of marriage reduced to 3 sentences on a piece of paper torn from a grocery list pad. The coward couldn't even face what he'd done. Later, I learned he'd already moved in with a woman he'd met at the casino. Someone half his age who believed his lies about being a successful businessman going through an amicable divorce. The employees at both bakeries hadn't been paid in 2 weeks. I'd been so distracted by the home foreclosure that I hadn't realized payroll had bounced. Sarah and the others had been too kind to complain, hoping things would work out. But hope doesn't pay rent or buy groceries. Suppliers started demanding immediate payment for past deliveries before they'd bring new orders. Without ingredients, we couldn't bake. Without product to sell, we couldn't generate income. It was a death spiral, and I was powerless to stop it. The health department showed up again this time with violations so absurd, I knew someone had been paid off. They found problems that didn't exist, cited regulations that had never been enforced. The development company's fingerprints were all over it, but I couldn't prove anything. Both locations were shut down until further notice. I had to gather my employees, these people who'd become family, and tell them I couldn't pay them what they were owed. The bakery was closing effective immediately. Sarah cried as she packed up her belongings, her daughter's college acceptance letter still pinned to the bulletin board in the break room. "I don't blame you," she said, but her eyes said otherwise. The local news picked up the story. Beloved Portland Bakery, forced to close after 20 years. They interviewed customers who shared memories of first dates, marriage proposals, birthday celebrations, all the moments that had happened within our walls. The elderly couple, Harold and Margaret, stood outside the locked doors looking lost. "This was our Tuesday tradition for 15 years," Margaret said to the reporter. "Where do we go now?" The shame was suffocating. I'd gone from successful business owner to cautionary tale in a matter of weeks. People who used to greet me warmly now avoided eye contact, as if failure might be contagious. The very community I'd fought to preserve no longer had a place for me. The studio apartment I moved into after losing the house was 500 square feet of water-stained walls and flickering fluorescent lights. The neighbors fought constantly, thin walls broadcasting every harsh word. Sirens wailed throughout the night, and the heating system clanged like a ghost in chains. But it was all I could afford, and even that barely. Emma dropped out of Stanford. She took a job stocking shelves at a grocery store, the same hands that were meant to heal people now arranging cereal boxes and cleaning up spills in aisle 7. When I visited her at work, seeing her in that uniform instead of scrubs, I had to run to the bathroom to throw up from guilt. Grace left Columbia and came home waiting tables at a diner that stayed open until 3 in the morning. She worked double shifts, her feet so swollen she had to ice them every night. Her boyfriend, a fellow law student named David, broke up with her via text. "You've changed," the message read. "You're not the ambitious woman I fell in love with anymore." I applied for jobs everywhere: grocery stores, restaurants, other bakeries. The responses were always the same. "You're overqualified," they'd say. "You'll leave as soon as something better comes along." But nothing better was coming. My reputation was destroyed, my skills deemed worthless in a market that favored youth and formal culinary education over decades of experience. Finally, I got an overnight shift at a commercial bakery that supplied grocery stores with mass-produced bread. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of crafting artisanal loaves with love and attention, I now stood on an assembly line watching machines squeeze out identical white bread that would be pumped full of preservatives and shipped in plastic bags. The work was mindless and physically brutal. My hands, already showing signs of arthritis from 20 years of kneading, screamed in pain by the end of each shift. I couldn't afford proper treatment, so I wrapped them in cheap heating pads and took generic painkillers that barely dulled the ache. One morning, after a particularly harsh shift, I ran into Harold at the grocery store. He was buying the mass-produced bread I'd probably helped make, the kind he never would have touched when Sunrise was open. He started to greet me, then saw my uniform and looked away. The pity in his eyes before he averted them was worse than any insult. The girls tried to hide their resentment, but I saw it in small moments. Emma scrolling through Instagram, seeing her former classmates in their white coats starting residencies. Grace watching legal dramas on TV, her jaw clenched as she folded her waitress apron. They'd say they were fine, that family was more important than careers, but dreams deferred have a way of curdling into bitterness. I tried reaching out to Marcus once, swallowing my pride, to ask for help with the girls' education. His new girlfriend answered his phone, her voice young and bright. "He's not available," she said. "And please stop calling. We're trying to move forward with our lives." Later, through the divorce proceedings, I learned he'd told her I was a bitter ex-wife who'd driven him away with my obsession with work. She believed every word, just as I once had. The cycle of lies continued, just with a different victim. The bankruptcy lawyer was kind but honest. "There's nothing left to salvage, Mrs. Patterson. The debts exceed any possible assets by such a margin that even if you worked 3 jobs for the next decade, you'd never climb out. Chapter 7 is your only option. Complete liquidation, fresh start. Fresh start." as if you could just erase 20 years like flour dusted off a counter. As if the memories of every birthday cake baked, every wedding catered, every morning greeting regular customers could simply be filed away with legal documents. The demolition notice arrived on a Tuesday, the same day Harold and Margaret used to visit. The building that housed the original Sunrise Bread would be torn down to make way for luxury condos. I went to watch, needing to witness the physical destruction of my dream. Other former business owners stood with me in the rain. The florist, the pharmacist, the hardware store owner. We were refugees from our own neighborhood, watching as wrecking balls swung into walls. We'd painted floors, we'd swept windows, we'd decorated for holidays. Each crash of debris was another piece of our histories erased. The rain started as a drizzle but soon became a downpour, as if the sky itself was mourning. I stood there until the last wall fell, until my bakery was nothing but rubble to be hauled away. Someone put a hand on my shoulder, and I turned to see Sarah. She didn't say anything, just stood with me as we watched our past become debris. That night in my moldy apartment, I sat on the floor and cried until I had no tears left. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, reduced to a pile of broken bricks and shattered dreams. I thought about Angela, then wondered if she'd survived, if she'd found something better. At least I'd helped one person, even if I couldn't help myself or my own daughters. The next morning started like every other, since I'd lost everything. 4:30 alarm, cold shower because the hot water was unreliable, cheap instant coffee that tasted like regret. I was putting on my uniform for another soul-crushing shift when I heard a car pull up outside, which was unusual for this neighborhood at this hour. Through the grimy window, I saw a Tesla, pristine white against the gray morning. A woman emerged dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. Something about her posture, the way she held her shoulders, seemed familiar. She looked up at my window and our eyes met. It was Angela, but not the scared, hungry 14-year-old I'd fed 20 years ago. This Angela stood tall, confident, her hair styled professionally, her makeup subtle but flawless. She was 34 now, and success radiated from her like heat from fresh bread. I fumbled with the door, my arthritic fingers struggling with the locks. When I finally opened it, we stood there staring at each other, 20 years collapsing into a single moment of recognition. "You don't remember me at first glance, do you?" she said, though her smile suggested she knew I did. "Most people don't. I've changed quite a bit since I was that homeless kid you fed without asking questions." "Angela," I whispered, and her professional composure cracked, slightly tears gathering in her eyes. She asked if she could come in, and I almost said no out of embarrassment. The apartment was so far from the warm, welcoming bakery where we'd first met, but she insisted, following me up the narrow stairs, her heels clicking on the worn linoleum. Inside, she looked around without judgment, then sat on my salvaged thrift store couch as if it were a throne. "Layla," she began, "I've been following what happened to you. I know about Marcus, the gambling, the bakeries, everything." My shame flared hot. "How did you—" "Because I never forgot you," she interrupted. "You saved my life, literally. Those 6 months you fed me were the only reason I didn't give up. After I left Portland, I kept tabs on you. When I heard about your troubles, I hired investigators. I know that sounds invasive, but I needed to understand what happened to the woman who showed me kindness when the world showed me none." She told me her story, then filling in the 20-year gap. After leaving Portland, she'd hitchhiked to Seattle, where a youth program helped her get her GED. She discovered she had a gift for programming, teaching herself through library computers and free online courses. By 21, she'd created an app that connected homeless people with resources, shelters, food banks, job opportunities, all in real time based on location. The app had sold to a major tech company for $8 million. But she didn't stop there. She used the money to start her own company, focusing on technology solutions for social problems. Now she was worth over $50 million, had been featured on magazine covers, gave talks at universities about overcoming adversity. "But none of it would have happened without you," she said. "That morning you brought me inside when everyone else wanted me gone. You showed me I was worth something. Every line of code I wrote, every deal I closed, every success I achieved, part of me was doing it to prove worthy of that kindness." She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope thick with documents. I bought the debt on both bakery properties, she said simply. I also purchased the development rights from that company. They were surprisingly eager to sell once my lawyers pointed out certain irregularities in their health department connections. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was the deed to the original bakery property transferred to my name free and clear. Behind it, a check for $200,000. Behind that, architectural plans for a renovated space. "This isn't charity," Angela said firmly. "It's an investment. I want to partner with you on something revolutionary. A bakery, yes, but also a training center. We'll teach disadvantaged youth not just baking, but business skills, financial literacy, self-sufficiency, everything they need to build their own futures." I stared at the plans through tears. They were beautiful, combining the charm of the old Sunrise bread with modern efficiency. There was commercial kitchen space for production, classroom areas for teaching, even a small apartment above for me to live. "The funding is already secured," she continued. "I've got corporate sponsors lined up, grants approved, even some of your old customers wanting to contribute. Sarah's agreed to come back as operations manager. Several of your former employees want to return." She pulled out 2 more documents. "These are full scholarships for Emma and Grace to return to school. No strings, no loans, just a chance to pursue their dreams again. They've already been accepted back to their programs." The weight of her words, the magnitude of her gesture overwhelmed me. I sobbed, ugly crying, that she gracefully ignored handing me tissues from her designer purse. When I finally composed myself, I asked the question burning in my mind. Why? After everything you've been through, why come back for me? "Because kindness creates ripples," she said. "You fed me when I was hungry, gave me dignity when I had none. That ripple became a wave that carried me to success. Now it's my turn to create ripples. This isn't about saving you, Layla. It's about giving you the tools to save yourself and others, just like you gave me the strength to save myself." We spent the rest of the morning planning her, taking notes on her tablet, while I shared ideas I'd thought were dead forever. She showed me the website she'd already built for the new venture, testimonials from community leaders supporting the project, even a documentary filmmaker interested in covering the story. "I've kept something all these years," she said, pulling out her phone. She showed me a photo album, digital copies of newspaper clippings, about Sunrise bread, photos taken from across the street of me working, images of the community gatherings we'd hosted. I collected these to remind myself that good people exist, that businesses can be about more than profit. She revealed something that stunned me. Over the years, several large catering orders had come from companies that seemed random, but were actually her funneling money to support the bakery without my knowledge. She'd been a guardian angel I never knew existed. "Marcus's gambling wasn't just addiction," she said carefully. "The woman he was seeing before he left you, she was connected to the casino. They target people like him, successful but vulnerable. Encourage the addiction, extend credit, knowing it'll destroy families. It's predatory, and my lawyers are building a case if you want to pursue it." I shook my head. "I just want to move forward, not backward." She smiled, understanding. "Then let's move forward together." The renovation happened faster than I could have imagined. Angela's connections and resources made bureaucracy disappear. Permits appeared overnight, and contractors worked with an efficiency I'd never seen. Within 3 months, the space was transformed. Emma flew home from Stanford for the grand reopening, wearing her white coat from the medical program she'd re-entered. She hugged me at the door, whispering, "Mom, you saved her. And she saved us." That's what love does. It comes back around. Grace brought her study group from Columbia, future lawyers, who wanted to understand social enterprise. She'd added a concentration in nonprofit law inspired by what we were building. "This is the kind of law I want to practice," she told me. "Law that helps people build things, not tear them down." The line for the reopening stretched around the block just like it had 20 years ago. Harold and Margaret were first in line. Harold wearing his best suit, Margaret clutching a bouquet of flowers. "We've missed our Tuesdays," Margaret said, tears streaming down her weathered face. Sarah had recruited an amazing team, including several people from the homeless community. Angela's app had helped. One young man, Jerome, reminded me so much of Angela at 14. Quiet, observant, soaking up every lesson like a sponge. He had gentle hands perfect for pastry work and an intuitive understanding of flavor combinations. Angela insisted on working the counter that first day, serving customers with the same grace she'd shown in boardrooms. She knew many of them by name, had researched their stories, understood the community she was helping to rebuild. When someone asked who she was, she simply said, "Someone who was helped when I needed it most." The youth program launched with 12 students, all from foster care or homeless situations. Angela personally mentored 3 of them, teaching coding alongside baking, showing them that success could take many forms. She'd created a curriculum that included financial literacy, mental health support, and job placement assistance. Marcus sent a letter 6 months after we reopened. His relationship had ended. He'd joined Gamblers Anonymous, was working as a bookkeeper for a small firm. He asked for forgiveness, not expecting reconciliation, just needing to apologize. I wrote back wishing him peace, meaning it. Anger takes energy I preferred to spend on building. The foundation Angela established, named Sunrise Foundation, after the bakery expanded beyond our single location. Within a year, she'd helped 15 other struggling business owners, all women who'd been betrayed or abandoned, restart their dreams. She never sought recognition, always redirecting attention to the entrepreneurs themselves. One morning, a year after reopening, Angela and I were baking together before dawn, the familiar rhythm of kneading dough, meditative and healing. She told me about her newest foster kids, 2 sisters aging out of the system, how she was teaching them both coding and baking. "You know what the secret ingredient is?" she asked, shaping sourdough into perfect rounds. "Love," I guessed the obvious answer. She shook her head. "Second chances. That's what you gave me, what I'm giving you, what we're giving everyone who walks through these doors. The chance to rise again like bread in the oven." Jerome had started developing his own recipes, experimenting with flavors from his grandmother's Filipino heritage. His ube rolls had become so popular, we could barely keep up with demand. He was 17 now, already accepted to culinary school with a full scholarship from the foundation. "You're going to run your own place someday," I told him one afternoon, as he perfected his technique. He smiled, shy but determined. "Maybe I'll buy the place next door, expand your empire." "Not mine," I corrected. "Ours, all of ours." The documentary about our story aired nationally, bringing attention to the crisis of small business destruction by predatory development. It sparked conversations about community preservation, about the value of local institutions beyond mere profit. 3 cities implemented new protections for legacy businesses after seeing it. Emma graduated medical school and chose to practice at a community clinic serving low-income families. The full-circle nature of it wasn't lost on anyone. She'd learned that healing happened in many ways, not just through medicine, but through dignity and respect. Grace passed the bar and joined a firm specializing in protecting small businesses from predatory practices. Her first case was helping a family-owned restaurant fight off developers using tactics similar to what had destroyed our original neighborhood. She won, setting precedent that protected dozens of other businesses. Standing in the bakery, now watching Jerome teach newer students, seeing Angela mentor young entrepreneurs, observing Sarah manage operations with joy instead of stress, I understood that sometimes destruction is just preparation for reconstruction. The first sunrise bread had been about my dream. This version was about everyone's dreams. We instituted a new tradition every morning at 6. Anyone who needed food could come in. No questions asked, no judgment passed. Some were homeless, some were working poor, some were just lonely and needed connection with community. We served them all with the same respect we showed paying customers. One morning, a young girl appeared at the door, maybe 15, wearing shoes held together with duct tape. The similarity to Angela 20 years ago was uncanny. I brought her inside, sat her at the warm corner table, and served her hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. "What's your name?" I asked gently. "Destiny," she whispered, wrapping her fingers around the mug exactly as Angela had. "Well, Destiny, I said you're welcome here whenever you need us. No questions, no requirements, just welcome." Angela watched from behind the counter, tears in her eyes. Later, she pulled me aside. "She's been in 7 foster homes in 3 years. I've already started the paperwork to mentor her through the foundation." The cycle continued, as it always should. 2 years have passed since Angela walked back into my life with salvation disguised as a business proposal. The bakery isn't just surviving, It's become a model for social enterprise that universities study and other cities try to replicate. But success isn't measured in profit margins or press coverage anymore. It's measured in lives changed in second chances, given in dignity restored. Jerome opened his own food truck last month, specializing in Filipino fusion pastries. His grandmother cried at the grand opening, seeing her recipes honored in this new land. He still comes by every Tuesday to bake with me, teaching the newest students what he learned, paying forward what was given to him. Destiny. The girl with the duct tape shoes now lives with Angela, who became her legal guardian. She's brilliant with numbers, wants to become an accountant, she says, to help small businesses avoid what happened to you, Miss Layla. She works the register on weekends, her smile bright, as she serves customers who have no idea she was homeless just 18 months ago. The ripple effects continue spreading. Sarah's daughter graduated college debt-free thanks to the Foundation's scholarship program. 3 of our former students have opened their own businesses. The neighborhood that developers wanted to gentrify has become a model for inclusive urban renewal, with longtime residents participating in the prosperity instead of being pushed out. Emma met someone at the clinic, another doctor who understands that healing is about more than medicine. They're planning a small wedding at the bakery next spring. With bread, I'll bake myself, and a cake decorated by Jerome. She wants Angela to be her maid of honor, the woman who gave our family back its future. Grace successfully defended 12 small businesses last year, earning a reputation as the lawyer who fights for the little guy. She and Angela are developing legal templates and resources for entrepreneurs who can't afford traditional legal services, democratizing access to justice. Marcus reached out once more, not seeking forgiveness this time, but offering it. He sent a check for $5,000, not much considering what he'd taken, but it was what he could afford. Use it for the youth program, his note said. Maybe it can prevent someone else from making my mistakes. I used it to create a financial literacy workshop specifically about gambling addiction, taught by a recovering addict who understood the destruction it caused. Marcus doesn't know this, probably never will, but his money has helped 7 families avoid the path we traveled. Angela and I still bake together every Thursday morning, starting at 4:30, when the world is quiet and possibilities feel endless. We don't talk much during these sessions, just work in comfortable rhythm, 2 women who've seen the worst and chosen to create something better. Last week she told me she's pregnant, having chosen single motherhood through IVF. I want my child to grow up, understanding that family isn't just blood, she said, her hands protective over her still flat stomach. It's the people who show up, who feed you when you're hungry, in all the ways a person can be hungry. She asked me to be the baby's grandmother, not by blood, but by choice. And I said yes through tears that blurred my vision, but not my certainty. We're already planning to convert the space next door into a daycare for employees and students, another way to remove barriers to success. The old Sunrise bread was my dream, built on traditional business models and conventional success metrics. This new version is our dream, measured in transformation and resilience. Every morning when I unlock the doors, I think about that cold February day, when I invited Angela inside, how that simple act of kindness created waves that would eventually save me when I was drowning. People sometimes ask if I regret the years of struggle, the loss, the humiliation. How can I regret the path that taught me what really matters? The first bakery fed stomachs. This one feeds souls. The first was about profit. This one is about purpose. The first was mine. This one belongs to everyone who needs it. Tonight there's a celebration planned. 5 years since Angela walked back into my life. 3 years since we reopened. 23 years since that February morning that changed everything. Former students will come back to share their successes. Community members will bring dishes from their cultures. City officials will present proclamations neither Angela nor I care about, but will accept gracefully. But this morning, it's just us in the kitchen making bread as humans have for thousands of years. Flour, water, yeast, salt, and thyme. Simple ingredients that become something essential, something that sustains life. Like kindness, which costs nothing but changes everything. Angela pulls a fresh batch of sourdough from the oven, the crust crackling as it meets cool air. Perfect, she says, though she's talking about more than bread. You know what I've learned? I tell her, sliding another batch into the oven. Grace isn't just something we say before meals. It's something we live one small gesture at a time. You showed me that when you came back. Every person we feed, every student we train, every second chance we offer, it's all grace. She nods, understanding. The girl I fed became the woman who saved me not with charity, but with the chance to rebuild with dignity. That's the deepest grace of all, the recognition that we all need saving sometimes, and we all have the power to save others. The sun is rising now, painting the bakery in golden light. Soon customers will arrive, students will begin their lessons, the daily rhythm of rising and baking and feeding will commence. But for this moment, we stand together in the quiet kitchen, two women bound by bread and kindness, and the absolute certainty that small acts of love can echo across decades. Tomorrow, Destiny will learn to make those apple turnovers that Harold and Margaret love. Jerome will perfect his newest recipe. Another hungry person will be fed without questions. The ripples will continue spreading, reaching shores we can't yet imagine. But that's tomorrow. Today, right now, Angela and I stand side by side, flour dusting our hands, hearts full of gratitude for second chances, and the grace to recognize them when they arrive. The girl I fed 20 years ago stands beside me as my business partner, my friend, my chosen family. We've both been hungry, and we've both been fed. We've both fallen, and we've both risen. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced a moment when kindness you showed came back to you in unexpected ways? Share your story in the comments below. Like this video if you believe in second chances. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories of resilience and redemption. And share this with someone who needs to remember that even in our darkest moments, grace can find us. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, we all have the power to change someone's life with the smallest act of kindness. You never know who might be your Angela or whose Angela you might be. Stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep rising.